This video, the most terrifying accidents caught on camera. Wow.
The helicopter blade suddenly tore off and, at a crazy speed, flew straight into the pilot's cabin. If I hadn't seen this incident recorded,
get the fuck out of here.
I never believed such a horrific coincidence could
get the
have
fuck out
happened
of
in
here.
real life. In this video, I've compiled the most epic accident footage ever caught on camera.
Shout out
with
to you.
Each story getting weirder and weirder. So, watch
Is that
till the
Freddy
end.
from
And,
iCarly?
as always,
what the fuck?
Viewer discretion is advised.
That's
On
crazy.
November 3rd, 2013, in Lake Superior, Wisconsin, several skydivers were jumping out of a plane.
Okay.
Mike Robinson was about to make his 4th jump of the day.
Okay.
Along with his colleagues, he approached the exit. Suddenly, at an altitude of over 3,500 meters, near Lake Superior, something unexpected
I ain't gonna lie, I won't go.
happened. Another
I
plane.
can't go skydiving, my nigga. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I'm a bitch. I'm a bitch. I hate heights like shit. If I go on a plane, my nigga, I'm about to skydive, my nigga, and I look down, and I see the whole fucking earth, nigga. Put the plane down, motherfucker. I don't give a fuck if I agree to the shit. Put this shit down.
Plane with skydivers started approaching them at high speed.
Ah, damn.
It collided with the wing just as a few
I
men
see
stood
this.
by the open door, ready to jump.
Oh.
The collision moment looks like a scene from an action movie. Imagine what the skydivers felt at that moment. One tried to hold on to the bar, but fell along with the wing.
I think they all survived, though.
They had to act immediately. So the rest of the people on board began jumping out chaotically, risking collision with
I think they
debris.
survived, though.
Staying inside the
I ain't gonna lie. Luckily, I'm sorry to pause this. Luckily, I think they all had their parachutes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, though.
plane meant certain death. In midair, Mike looked up and saw the plane turning into a fiery ball spiraling down. Luckily, all the skydivers on board were professionals, with hundreds, if not thousands, of jumps behind them. For
Facts.
Mike, this was his 937th
That
jump.
shit look at that.
Yet it's the one he'll remember forever.
Oh, they
Thanks
all
to their
survived.
skill and experience, they managed to steer their parachutes to avoid the burning parts of the plane falling. But what about the pilots? One of them also jumped out with a parachute, while the other managed to land the less damaged plane.
Wow.
Despite the scale of the crash, the skydivers only got bruises and muscle aches. However,
Oh, he's goated.
I know an even more terrifying story that happened in the
Like
sky.
what?
Here,
Oh.
balloons are involved. On April 20th, 2008, Odilier Antonio De Carli, a Brazilian Catholic priest,
I thought
set
he
out
was
to break
Italian.
a 19-hour
Get the
flight
fuck
record
out of here.
using helium
Not doing
balloons.
this shit.
This was his second attempt. In
Are
January,
y'all crazy? Who's doing this, my nigga? Nah, deadass, bro. Who's doing this shit? I'm not. You would be a clown to do some dumb shit like this, real shit.
he had
Real
covered
shit, bro.
30 kilometers using 600
shit.
balloons. With their help, he reached an altitude of 5,300 meters. It looked spectacular. Odilier's creative flight was meant to draw attention to his church on wheels.
Do we got a
where
parachute, though?
parishioners called him Padre de Bello. He aimed to use
Padre.
this epic flight to attract more donations for the community's benefit. The event drew many spectators and press, just as Padre de Bello wanted. But things didn't go as planned. The weather turned cloudy and it
GG's.
started to rain.
GG's.
Despite the conditions, the priest didn't want to cancel his attempt, which was a mistake. At 1 p.m., the journey officially began. In this video, you can see Odilier sitting in a chair attached to about 1,000
What?
balloons.
Why?
And to the excited cheers of the crowd. He rose to an altitude of 5,800 meters, even higher than he expected.
But why, though?
Odilier planned to end his flight in Dourados, Mato Grosso do Sul.
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, yo, imagine going up to the sky and you see a fucking UFO. Oh, shit. Like, you see a UFO and you look into the UFO while you in the fucking sky on that balloon, and then you just see mad aliens just staring at you like this. Yo, nigga, what? Put me down now, my nigga.
20 hours.
Real rap.
Nothing seemed amiss.
Real
as
spill.
Carly had all the necessary safety gear. A parachute, helmet,
Oh, so he's
waterproof
valid.
suit,
Okay.
GPS device, mobile phone, satellite phone, aluminum thermal suit,
Oh, he's chilling.
and at least a 5-day food and water supply.
Wow.
He periodically reported his location to the Brazilian Navy. The last time Odilier called was at 8:45
Oh, this nigga was
p.m.,
sturdy.
and he was never heard from again.
Wait, what?
The Brazilian Air Force and firefighters started searching near the Santa Catarina coast where he was likely to be. They looked through the ocean for 4 days but then stopped, as the chance of Odilier surviving in those conditions were slim.
Oh, GG's.
His loved ones and parishioners were devastated when
Damn.
finally, on July 4th, the remnants of the balloons and Padre de Bello himself were found in the ocean,
Damn.
100 kilometers from Makey. However, it turned out to be only half of his body.
What?
No one still knows exactly what
That's
happened to
crazy.
him. whether he injured himself during the fall or was attacked by an underwater predator.
Maybe
But
attacked.
this story is truly chilling. The priest's
Damn.
noble intentions make the story even more tragic. The only thing worse might be taking risks just for the adrenaline rush.
But my thing is, why would he do that?
Fabio Ezequiel de Moraes went with his family to a bridge in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for the thrill of bungee jumping. Inspired by his father's enthusiasm, his 6-year-old son desperately wanted to jump with him. Fabio was struck by his son's bravery and agreed. However, when it came time to put on the gear, Fabio reconsidered and told his son that he was too young and it would be better if he just watched and cheered for him.
Smart
this time.
father.
The video shows Fabio standing at the abyss's edge and then jumping headfirst into the valley below. However, I can't show you what happened to Fabio in the
GG's.
next second.
GG's.
Due to a miscalculation by the bungee jumping instructors, instead of stopping a few meters above the ground, Fabio fell onto the rocks from a 40-meter height.
Oh, that's fucked. Oh, so yo, the family better sue that. Yo, sue the instructors for $500 million, my nigga.
Passed away right before his young son's eyes.
Damn.
Although this story breaks my heart, everyone knows bungee jumping is risky. Yet there is a video of a tragic incident that initially didn't even seem like it could be dangerous.
Damn.
On June 14th, 2008,
That's crazy.
Japanese fans of a funny TV show were watching a live broadcast from Television Miyazaki. Tetsushi Yanagita, a reporter for the program, attended a quirky competition held in a rice field in Tokakyo-cho to show it live. The rules were simple and somewhat childish. 2 participants had to stand back to back on a platform and push each other with their butts until one fell into the muddy waters.
Why'd they
The
do
one who
that?
stayed on the platform was declared the winner,
Mud is
while
hard.
the loser had to wash off the mud in humiliation. At first glance, this competition seemed like the worst you could expect were some bruises and wet pants. So when the participants invited reporter Tetsushi to join the fun, he got caught up in the excitement. The video
Niggas
shows
did
that
it.
Tetsushi
Dickhead.
had little chance right from the start. He quickly lost his balance and jumped off the platform into the mud like in the pool, landing head first.
Why would he do that?
The water was about 15 centimeters
fuck?
deep with a thick mud layer underneath. This made Tetsushi fall anything but soft. The reporter broke his neck and couldn't move. His body
Why would he do that? What? See,
was completely paralyzed. Not knowing about Tetsushi's serious injury, the crew thought he was joking, so they began playfully pushing his face further into the mud for losing.
oh, that's
The
fucked.
players had no idea that during their antics, Tetsushi was desperately struggling to survive.
That is
unable
crazy.
to lift his head out of the water to take a breath. He almost blacked out, hearing the hysterical laughter of the participants ringing in his ears.
Wow.
Later, they pulled Tetsushi up, only to toss him back into the water again.
What the fuck?
TV viewers probably found these playful antics amusing too. It looks like a scene straight out
My
of
son
Black
gonna do
Mirror.
it right now, my nigga.
Tetsuchi remained partially paralyzed for life. It's horrifying to go to work and have no idea that your workday could end in a sudden tragedy.
That's what I'd be scared
Just like
of.
what happened to the construction workers at the Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans, in Louisiana, USA. On October 12, 2019, at 9:12 a.m., workers felt the structure shake before it started collapsing right under their feet. This epic collapse was caught on camera by a bystander. It's chilling to watch, yet hard to look away. However, it'll become painful to watch once I tell you that 3 construction workers lost their lives under the rubble, and 30
Damn.
were taken to the hospital with injuries. The bodies of 2 of the deceased, Jose Ponce Areola and Quinyon Wimberly,
Damn, not
remained
about black, son.
trapped under the ruins for 3 months.
Rest in peace to both of them.
All because the structural engineer improperly designed and failed to check the steel bolt connections holding the building together.
Dickheads.
Before the collapse,
Yo, niggas,
another construction
niggas be the reason that people die, bro. Y'all niggas are so stupid.
worker, Ramirez Palma, tried to warn project supervisors about several issues with the structure,
Niggas don't
one
listen.
of which was unreliable support. Still, he was told to ignore these findings.
Niggas don't listen.
Only after the
Joe.
tragedy did the mayor of New Orleans order the entire building to be demolished. Next up, I have a story about another surprisingly dangerous profession, a driver. One day in June 2019, the residents of Tadoussac were shaken by a
Tadoussac?
terrifying incident. In broad daylight,
the fuck?
near the local ferry terminal, a van suddenly veered off the highway and sped straight toward people.
Why would he do
Pedestrians
that?
scattered in all directions to avoid being hit while the van headed toward the
Damn.
river. Behind the wheel was Eric Bellick, Those who managed to catch a glimpse of the driver noticed the fear on his face. Something was wrong, and he wasn't doing this on purpose. Eric was deeply worried about the pedestrians and the passenger in the van with him. Yet he realized the crash was inevitable. As it turned out, the van's mechanism had malfunctioned, and Eric simply couldn't stop it. He was yelling and honking, urging people to get out of the way. But that wasn't the only problem. Right ahead of him in the water was a ferry loaded with passengers standing on the back deck, enjoying the scenic views. The loading ramp leading to the ferry was just beginning to lift. The video captures the moment the van speeds across it, launching into the air. It's the kind of scene you often see in epic movie chase sequences, where the vehicle lands on its wheels, and everyone survives. That only happens in the movies, though. The van crashed into the ferry and was completely wrecked. Fortunately, the people on the ferry weren't hurt, and the woman and driver were found alive in the wreckage of the van, although seriously injured. They were immediately taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, the driver passed away a few hours later.
Damn.
Something about this story does resemble a Hollywood movie.
I'm not gonna lie, that's crazy though. Like, what? He couldn't. Like, what the fuck happened?
And it's the heroic act.
Like, why
of
did it do that?
Witnesses say the consequences could have been worse. The driver tried to stop by crashing into metal gates to avoid plowing into the crowd. He managed to slow the van down for a few seconds, saving lives. However, there's a story where the driver couldn't react so quickly. In March 2024, 46 pilgrims from Gaborone were traveling by bus to an Easter conference in Limpopo Province, South Africa, on the Mamatlakala mountain pass between Mokopane and Marken. The driver lost control, and the bus plunged off the road, crashing onto the rocky surface from a height of 50 meters.
That is bad.
The most horrifying part was that the bus caught fire after the crash.
Damn.
People inside burned alive.
Oh,
Of
fuck.
the 46 people on board, only an 8-year-old girl survived.
What?
Though she suffered numerous severe injuries. Now, I've added another mode of transport to my
She's so
travel
lucky.
phobias. Speaking of which, my fear of planes isn't without reason. The story of the 9 skydivers is one of the rare instances where someone managed to survive a crash. Bye. That's what 22-year-old Burcu Salam wrote in her Instagram story on December 1st, 2022. In the photo, she's smiling in the airplane cabin, enjoying the views. It was a sightseeing flight over Turkey, but her farewell turned out to be prophetic. At the controls of the TC-UHY aircraft was Hakan Koksal, the president of the Uniceli Supportive Aviation Association and an experienced pilot. What could possibly go wrong? They took off from the runway in Bursa, but just 15 minutes later, when the plane was at an altitude of 1,200 meters, it stopped responding to the controllers. They simply vanished. And minutes later, horrifying footage appeared online showing the plane clipping a 380,000-volt power line in Osman Ghazi and exploding.
Damn.
Local authorities said one passenger passed away when the plane caught fire, and another ejected but still lost their life on impact.
I'm not gonna lie, that would be like so, like, imagine like being in that situation, God forbid, bro. That'd be like, what do you do?
The exact cause of the crash remains unknown. Yet it might have been due to weather deterioration or sudden technical issues. Otherwise, no pilot would have descended so low near power lines. Just look at the wreckage of the plane after the crash. It's terrifying to imagine what happened to the bodies of the victims. The Salam family didn't even know their daughter was on the plane that day. They only found out about the incident when the police called to inform them of her death. Her body was so disfigured that her father identified her only by the jewelry she was wearing that day. Nonetheless, there's an even more dangerous flying apparatus than a plane, a homemade aircraft cobbled together from spare parts. Ismail Shaikh Ibrahim, a 24-year-old Indian guy from Fulswangi in Margaon, was obsessed with the idea of putting his small village on the map. Inspired by Rancho's character in the movie 3 Idiots, where Rancho builds a small drone from scratch, Ismail decided he wanted to do something unique too. So, he resolved to build a helicopter by himself. He began gathering information about helicopter construction and assembly, watching numerous YouTube videos on the topic. It took him nearly 2 years to collect all the necessary parts.
Damn, 2 years? He was dedicated.
In 2021, after all his hard work, Ismail created a prototype single-seat helicopter and installed an engine from a Maruti 800, one of India's most popular cars.
Wow.
However, a car engine doesn't have the specs or power of a helicopter engine. Still, Ismail thought it was no big deal. as he made a relatively small experimental version just to lift off the ground
That's
briefly.
crazy.
For a sensation, that would be enough.
That's crazy,
Ismail wanted to showcase his helicopter to the whole village and put on an epic show for Indian Independence Day, so he decided to test it near his workshop. On August 10th, in front of his friends, they eagerly awaited this moment and started recording everything on their phones. Ismail fired up the engine, and the rotor blades began spinning rapidly when suddenly, no, the engine wasn't the problem. It came from where they least expected it. The tail rotor blade broke off and struck the main rotor blades above. Before anyone could react, the broken blade flew into the cockpit. Since this was a prototype, Ismail hadn't installed doors in the cockpit, as that would have required more time and parts. He didn't plan on full-fledged flying or performing stunts, so he was sure he wouldn't fall out. However, he never imagined that doors could have saved him, because when that piece of the blade flew inside at high speed, it slashed his throat, causing instant death. Terrified, his friends immediately rushed to him and took him to the nearest hospital. Yet it was already too late. Ismail passed away before receiving medical help. This tragic coincidence led to the death of a young man who was just pursuing his dream.
That nigga would have went crazy.
Each of today's stories is horrifying in its own way, but this last one strikes me as the most tragic.
That's crazy. Nah, that's OD.
Which of these incidents shocked you the most?
Bro, the nigga waited. Bro, the nigga took his time. 2 years, gang. 2 years? Created something just for him to pass away from it? God damn. That's unlucky, bro. God damn.
Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You never know where death might be lurking. Still, after watching my videos, you'll be more cautious. Take care.
That's fucked. W video though, that's crazy, bro.